You are welcome to Tempo Stories Hub. Kindly let us know where you are watching from. Now let's begin with the story. The silence in the kitchen wasn't just quiet. It was a physical weight, thick and freezing, crushing the air out of the room until my lungs ached with the effort of simply existing. It was the silence of a catastrophic collision, a moment of impact so complete that all the shattering noise had happened internally, echoing only in the tight drum of my own heartbeat. My sister, Clara, stood framed in the doorway, a porcelain cup of cooling herbal tea suspended halfway to her lips. Her eyes fixed on me with an expression that was not rage, but a chilling, absolute certainty. And on the opposite side of the granite countertop, under the unforgiving glare of the task lighting, stood Leo, her husband, the man I had just been laughing with. A laughter that had lingered perhaps a fraction of a second too long, my hand resting on his forearm perhaps a fraction of an inch too intimately, my gaze holding his perhaps a fraction of a degree too warmly. It was a flirtation, yes, but one so subtle, so interwoven into the easy, familiar tapestry of their years of friendship with me, that for a split second I nearly denied it. I nearly explained it away as sisterly affection for a brother-in-law, or a simple, harmless camaraderie. But the look in Clara's eyes killed the lie before it could form on my tongue. She hadn't walked in on a passionate kiss or a clandestine embrace. She had walked in on something far more corrosive. The raw, undeniable potential for something more. She had witnessed the electric thread of possibility that had been quietly spooling between Leo and me for months, maybe years, finally pulled taut and visible in the sterile late-night glow of their perfect stainless steel kitchen. Leo, unlike me, seemed incapable of stillness. He dropped the dish towel he'd been using to dry the last of the wine glasses, the faint thwump against the tile floor sounding like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. His eyes flicked between us, wide and panicked, the easy confidence he normally wore like a custom-tailored suit utterly stripped away. His silence was the sound of a man caught not in the act of sin, but in the deeper, more complicated sin of allowing it. "Clara," I managed, the single word emerging as a strangled, reedy sound, entirely unlike my own voice. I pushed myself back from the counter, instinctively creating distance, as if a meter of air could erase the transgression. Clara said nothing. She didn't even lower the teacup. She just stood there, her slight figure dominating the doorway, her presence radiating a cold, devastating clarity. Clara was the elder sister, the responsible one, the one who had always followed the rules, the one who had built the perfect life with the perfect man. The life I, Amelia, the wilder, more restless younger sibling, had always secretly envied, even while claiming to reject it. Leo finally spoke, his voice gravelly. "Clara, honey, it's not what you think. We were just talking about the presentation for work tomorrow. Amelia was just giving me a few pointers on the graphics." It was a pathetic, transparent lie, and it only served to chip away at the last vestiges of dignity clinging to the scene. The presentation was scheduled for Thursday. This was Monday night. The graphics were finished. And we hadn't been discussing work. We had been discussing the absurdity of our childhood crush on the same fictional TV character, an inane conversation that had, somehow, over the last half hour, morphed into an examination of shared anxieties, dreams deferred, and that dangerous, comfortable space of mutual understanding that had always been the foundation of my relationship with Leo. Leo and I had met because of Clara, of course. For the last 10 years, he had been the dependable, charming fixture in our lives. He was the one who fixed my leaky faucet, the one who listened patiently when I got fired from yet another ill-suited job, the one who knew how to make Clara laugh when she was stressed. He wasn't just a brother-in-law. He was family, and that familial intimacy had slowly, insidiously, incubated a feeling that should never have been allowed to bloom. I looked at Clara, and for the first time I saw the true depth of her pain, a wound that was already bleeding invisibly. She didn't believe Leo's lie, and the fact that he offered it made the moment worse. She slowly lowered the cup, placing it deliberately on the hallway table next to her, the delicate porcelain setting down with an unnerving absence of sound. "I know what I saw, Leo," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the emotion I had been bracing for. "And I know what I've been feeling for the last 6 months." My stomach plummeted. She hadn't just stumbled upon this one instance. She had been observing, cataloging, collecting evidence of the shift. The extra-long hugs, the inside jokes that excluded her, the way my eyes always found his at family dinners. The unspoken tension, it turned out, hadn't been unspoken to her at all. "Clara, I swear there's nothing going on," I rushed to interject, hating the frantic defensive edge in my own voice. It was a stupid, meaningless moment. I was being careless. "I shouldn't have touched your arm. I'm sorry." "You shouldn't have touched him," she repeated, her gaze finally lifting from Leo and landing squarely on me. Her eyes were usually a warm, friendly hazel, but now they were the cold, hard color of slate. "No, Amelia, you shouldn't have. But more than that, you shouldn't have looked at him that way. That's not carelessness. That's intention." The word hung in the air. Intention. It was the key to the entire catastrophe. She wasn't angry about the fleeting physical contact. She was devastated by the communication of desire, the silent language of shared longing that transcends touch. Leo took a step toward her, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Honey, please, let's talk. Don't do this. Amelia is family. This is crazy. We've been friends with Amelia for a decade." Clara flinched away from his touch as if he'd offered her a hot coal. "That's what makes it so beautiful, doesn't it, Leo? The proximity, the trust, the convenience. You didn't have to look far for someone to share your understanding with. You just had to look across the dining table." Her voice finally cracked on the last sentence, and the forced composure broke. Tears welled up, not streaming down her face, but clinging fiercely to her lower lids, making her eyes look impossibly large and glistening with betrayal. The sight of her pain was like a physical blow, a sudden sharp clarity that wiped away all the lingering sparks of forbidden attraction. In that instant, I saw the devastating cost of my selfishness. I knew then that I had to do the one thing I was always bad at: take full, unambiguous responsibility. "She's right, Leo," I said, looking at him now, not with lingering warmth, but with a sudden profound disappointment in us both. "Stop lying. Stop minimizing it. We were flirting. I started it. I wanted to see if I still had it in me, and I used you. I crossed a line that I should never have even approached, and I broke the one person who always loved and trusted me unconditionally. It wasn't entirely true that I started it. Leo's reciprocation had been immediate and electric, but it was necessary to shoulder the blame now. Clara needed a villain, a target for her pain, and I was the sister, the one who was supposed to be loyal to her blood. I was the one who could be cut out without destroying her marriage completely. It was a desperate sacrifice, but a necessary one to preserve whatever tiny piece of her perfect life could be salvaged. Clara simply shook her head, her gaze shifting back to me, the tears finally starting their slow, scorching path down her cheeks. "No, Amelia. You didn't just cross a line. You detonated the boundary. You took the most sacred trust one had, the trust of my sister and the trust of my husband, and you put it on a platter for your own petty ego boost. I don't know what's worse, your casual disregard for my marriage, or Leo's silent approval of it." She finally turned to Leo, a gesture of finality. "You know where the guest room is, Leo. Sleep there. Don't try to explain it. Don't try to minimize it, because I don't want to hear it tonight. And as for you, Amelia..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The look was enough. It spoke of a lifetime of shared history instantly vaporized. She turned her back to us, a straight, stiff spine of unimaginable hurt, and walked slowly down the hallway, not towards the master bedroom, but toward the home office, the room she always retreated to when she needed to think, to organize, to plan her next move. The door clicked shut with a soft, ominous finality. Leo and I were left alone again, but the atmosphere had changed utterly. The magnetic pull of attraction was replaced by a repulsive force of shared guilt and misery. I looked at him, the handsome, kind man who was now just another source of my sister's immense pain, and felt a wave of crushing self-loathing. "You have to go, Amelia," Leo whispered, running a hand through his hair, his earlier panic hardening into a grim, desperate resolve. "Now, before she comes out again." I need to fix this. I need to talk to her. There's nothing to fix, Leo. You just saw it, I countered, my voice low and fierce. She's not mad at the moment. She's destroyed by the truth. And your first instinct was to lie to her face. You're not helping. Just go, he hissed, the kind, charming facade completely gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered animal. He didn't want me there as a witness to his humiliation or his failure. He wanted me gone so he could try and patch up the gaping wound we had torn into his marriage. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my jacket and purse, my movements clumsy and rushed. As I walked past him, I paused, looking at the man who had briefly represented an escape, a fantasy, and was now just the central figure in my family's impending ruin. I'm sorry, Leo, I said, meaning it for him, for Clara, for the whole tangled mess of our lives. He didn't look up. He was already staring at the closed office door, his face a mask of regret and fear. Get out, Amelia. I walked out of their immaculate silent home and into the cold night air, the kitchen scene replaying in an endless, sickening loop behind my eyes. I had come for a casual Monday night movie and left as a pariah, a traitor, the sister who had committed the ultimate betrayal. The door clicked shut behind me, not with the soft finality of the office door, but with the hard, metallic sound of a lock snapping into place, sealing me out of their perfect world forever. The unspoken tension had finally spoken, and its voice was the sound of a family breaking. I drove the 15 blocks from their house to my small apartment in a haze of adrenaline and self-recrimination, the silence of my car mirroring the devastating silence I had just left. The city lights, usually a comforting, lively blur, were now harsh and accusatory, illuminating the brutal truth. I had successfully destroyed the most stable relationship in my life, both familial and professional, since Leo and Clara often helped me network. The car smelled faintly of the expensive cologne Leo wore, a scent I now associated not with forbidden warmth, but with the cold sweat of betrayal. The moment I stepped into my own living room, the frantic energy abandoned me, replaced by a hollow, paralyzing dread. I didn't know what to do next. Call Clara. Well, give her space. Definitely. But the thought of silence stretching between us for days, weeks, maybe forever, was unbearable. Clara and I had argued before, vicious, childish squabbles over clothes or college funds, but this was different. This wasn't a fight. It was a schism. The inevitable call came 3 hours later, just past 2 a.m. I had been sitting on the edge of my bed, fully dressed, staring at the muted television, waiting for the verdict. My phone display flared with her name. I answered on the first ring, my voice tight. Clara. Don't call me that, her voice came, startlingly clear and sharp, cutting through the static. There were no sounds of tears, no gasping sobs. She sounded terrifyingly composed, like a prosecutor presenting an unassailable case. We need to talk, Amelia. But not on the phone. You're coming back here. Blink. Back. Clara, I think we both need time. I don't need time. I need clarity, she interrupted, the control in her tone absolute. And I need you to look me in the eye when I ask you what I need to know. Leo is gone. He's staying at a hotel near his office. You and I are going to talk sister to sister, without the buffer of the man we were both, apparently, competing for. My heart seized. Competing for. That phrase, so casual, yet so devastatingly accurate, laid bare the ugly, complicated truth of my actions. It hadn't just been a reckless moment. It had been an unconscious, deeply rooted attempt to take something that belonged to her, the prized possession of her seemingly flawless life. I'll be there in 10 minutes, I said, knowing any protest was futile. She was demanding a reckoning, and for the sake of whatever might be left of our bond, I owed her that much. The drive back was even heavier than the first. The house was dark when I arrived, save for the single light blazing in the dining room, a room designed for family gatherings and festive cheer, now set up for a quiet execution. Clara was seated at the massive mahogany table, 2 untouched glasses of water before her, along with a bottle of untouched gin. This detail was significant. Clara only drank gin when she was utterly distraught and seeking chemical oblivion, yet here it was, sealed. She wanted to be sober for this. She wanted to feel every edge of the pain. I sat opposite her, sinking into the heavy leather chair. The air was charged, expectant. "Thank you for coming," she began, her tone formal, the kind she used when speaking to a junior colleague she was about to fire. "I thought about calling the police for trespassing. But then I remembered we shared a bedroom for 18 years. I figured I owed you the courtesy of a clear explanation before I permanently write you out of my life." The bluntness was a punch to the gut. "Clara, please. Don't talk like that. I know I messed up, I know I was selfish, but please don't cut me out. You're my only sister." She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the cold wood, her gaze unwavering. "And you are mine. Which is why this betrayal cuts so deep, Amelia. It's not just adultery. It's incestuous. You violated our blood bond." "It wasn't adultery, Clara. We haven't even kissed, I swear. It was just flirting. It was stupid and harmless and—" "Stop," she commanded, her voice rising in volume for the first time. "You keep using the word harmless. Do you see me? Do I look harmless? Do you think the last hour spent looking at our wedding photos and trying to figure out if I ever truly knew my husband was harmless? It's corrosive. It eats away at everything you touch." She took a slow, measured breath, regaining control. "Let's get to the specifics. When did it start?" I swallowed hard. "Tonight. Just tonight." He was tired from work, I was pouring myself a glass of water, and we just started talking about that old show and— "Don't lie to me again." Her fist slammed lightly on the table, making the water glasses shudder. "The way you look at him. The way you knew exactly where to tickle his palm to make him smile. The way you finish his obscure literary quotes. That's not one night, Amelia. That's years of quiet cultivation. I watched you tonight, Amelia. I didn't just see you touch his arm. I saw you looking at his wedding ring, and I saw a flicker of triumph in your eye." I recoiled. "Triumph? Well, that's an awful thing to say." I felt guilty, I felt awful. "Did you?" she challenged, her eyes narrowing. "Or did you feel thrilled? Did you feel that little rush of excitement, knowing you could still make my husband look at you with that spark? Because that's what this is about, isn't it? It's not about Leo. It's about me. It's always been about me." The accusation hit me with the unexpected force of truth. I didn't want to admit it, but a lifetime of feeling secondary to Clara's organized success had created a toxic resentment. She had the grades, the perfect job, the perfect house, and the perfect husband. I had always been the chaotic, artistic failure who needed her help. "That's unfair, Clara." "I love you," I mumbled, the words sounding hollow even to me. "If you loved me, you would never have tried to burn down the one thing I built that you couldn't replicate. You could never get stability, so you went for his attention. You went for my attention by hurting me in the deepest possible way." She pressed, leaning in closer, her intensity overwhelming. "I want to know if you really love him, or if you just wanted to prove you could have him." I met her gaze, forced to confront the ugliness inside me. I don't know. I love his comfort. I love that he sees the same ridiculous humor in the world that I do. I love that he doesn't judge my mess. But no, I don't love him the way a wife should love a husband. I just love that he saw me. It was a terrible admission, but the honesty felt like a physical release. It was about validation, not romantic love. Clara closed her eyes for a long moment, absorbing the blow. When she opened them, the anger had been replaced by a weary resignation, a profound sorrow. "And Leo?" she asked softly. "Did he see you, Amelia? Or did he just see an easier, less complicated version of the life he was tired of? Did he see a fling, a safe outlet, or did he see a future?" "He saw a mirror," I admitted, whispering the words. "He's tired, Clara. He feels trapped by the perfection, just like I was always trapped by my own lack of it. We are both escape artists, and we were trying to escape into each other's attention. He never would have left you. I know that. He was too much of a coward. A coward, she repeated, tasting the word. Yes, I think that's right. This was the core of the reckoning. The cold dissection of motives. We weren't dealing with two passionate lovers separated by circumstance, but two selfish people using each other for emotional validation at the expense of someone they supposedly cared for. Clara reached into the pocket of her dressing gown and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It looked like a receipt. I didn't just come home tonight and happen upon a cute scene, Amelia. I was looking for proof. I came home tonight because of this. She slid the paper across the table. It was a receipt for a private parking garage downtown, dated last Tuesday late afternoon. The location was right next to the high-end cocktail bar where Leo sometimes met clients. I found this crumpled up in his coat pocket, Clara explained, her voice hardening again. He had no meeting that afternoon. I checked his calendar. I called his secretary. So, Amelia, tell me, was this just flirting over the kitchen counter? Or was this flirting over expensive martinis at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday? My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen Leo last Tuesday. I had been at a job interview. But Clara's discovery changed the scope of the problem instantly. Leo was lying not just about me but about someone else. The betrayal was far deeper, far more systemic than I had realized. Clara, I swear to you, I did not see him last Tuesday. I haven't seen him alone outside of this house in 6 months, not since the Christmas party, I pleaded, pushing the receipt back toward her. He's lying to you about something, yes, but not with me. She looked at me, searching for the lie she was so certain was there. I held her gaze, offering her the painful raw truth of my own transgression to convince her of my innocence in this new, deeper one. After a tense silence, she crumpled the receipt back into her hand. I believe you actually, she said slowly. Because your eyes always go wide when you lie. They are wide now, but with surprise, not deception. Leo is clearly a bigger liar than either of us realized. And that makes what you did even more disgusting. How? Gasped, confused. Because you were just the safety net, Amelia. The easy distraction. The ego boost he took at home. While he was out there, cultivating real secrets, he was keeping you around to make his conscience feel better, to distract me, or perhaps to give himself a plausible, less damaging excuse if he got caught. You were his pawn. And you allowed yourself to be used to hurt your sister. The full weight of my pathetic role in this drama settled on me. I hadn't been the alluring temptress. I had been the convenient shield. My desire had been exploited to cover a more serious infidelity. Clara stood up, walking toward the large French doors overlooking the manicured backyard. You wanted a reckoning. Here it is. I am not deciding whether to divorce Leo based on your cheap flirtation, Amelia. I am deciding based on the fact that he has been hiding things, and your foolishness was just the thing that made me look closer. So thank you, I suppose, for being the convenient distraction that cracked the facade. She turned back to me, the anger replaced by a chilling, logical finality. This is what happens now. You pack up every single possession of yours from this house. The spare toothbrush, the book you left in the guest room, every single thing. And you will not contact me or him unless I reach out to you first. I need a clean, sanitized space to deal with the collapse of my marriage. You, Amelia, represent that collapse. If I see you at my work, at my gym, or at my family gatherings, I will walk away. We are strangers now. Do you understand? I couldn't speak. I simply nodded, the tears finally starting to flow freely, silent acknowledgement of the permanent severance. Good, she concluded. Now get out of my house. And I hope the fleeting moment of feeling seen was worth burning down your entire family. I rose, pulling myself together, and walked past her, resisting the powerful urge to touch her, to hug her, to beg for forgiveness one last time. I knew any physical attempt would only provoke disgust. As I reached the front door, I heard her voice, softer this time, sounding defeated. And Amelia, tell me the truth about this one thing. If I hadn't walked in tonight, would you have crossed the line fully? Would you have eventually slept with him? I paused, my hand on the cold brass knob, looking at the silent, perfect house that was now a hollow tomb of my sister's perfect life. "I don't know, Clara," I admitted, the truth hanging heavy and ugly. "But I can tell you this. I am a shallow, messy person, but I am not a murderer. And sleeping with him would have been the murder of you." I hope I would have stopped myself. But I am desperately afraid that the answer is yes. I didn't wait for her response. I simply opened the door and walked out, leaving the sister who loved me, and the wreckage of my own making behind. The full weight of the loss, not of a brother-in-law, but of my only sister, crushed me as the door clicked shut for the final time. The next 3 months were defined by a profound, echoing emptiness. Clara's silence was absolute, a perfect, hermetic seal drawn around her life. She hadn't just cut me off. She had performed an emotional excision, removing me cleanly and completely. Our parents, heartbroken and bewildered, became accidental messengers, relaying sparse, sterile updates. Clara was focused on her work. Clara was starting yoga. Clara had formally filed for divorce from Leo. The last update hit me with the force of a delayed impact. I was the catalyst, the spark that ignited the explosion. Yet the casualty was their marriage, and the deepest victim was Clara. I lived in a state of suspended animation. The guilt a cold, heavy blanket I couldn't shake off. My small apartment, once a sanctuary for my bohemian, unanchored life, now felt like a prison. Every object seemed to mock me with its triviality compared to the magnitude of the ruin I had wrought. I tried to focus on my painting, the one stable thing I'd always had, but my hands were clumsy and my vision blurred. All I could create were dark, swirling abstracts that felt like the physical manifestation of my own chaotic regret. I deleted Leo's number immediately after the confrontation, wanting no avenue for contact, no further temptation, and no potential for more complication. Surprisingly, he never reached out. His silence, unlike Clara's, felt like a deliberate strategy, the coward's retreat she had accurately predicted. He was trying to minimize the damage to himself, dealing with his divorce and the discovery of his other infidelity, hoping I would simply vanish from the periphery of his shame. The isolation was the worst part. Clara and I had always been each other's primary confidants, critics, and anchor points. Now every mundane milestone, a promotion, a bad date, a funny meme, was a reminder of the conversation I could no longer have. I was adrift, defined only by the gaping hole where her presence used to be. One rainy Saturday, driven by a desperate need for connection, I drove to our parents' house. I found Mom in the garden, pruning roses with a tired, distracted precision. "She won't speak to you, Amelia," Mom said immediately, preempting my question without looking up. Her voice was gentle, but laced with a weariness that cut me deeper than any rage. "She asked us not to mediate. She needs this space to breathe." "How is she, really?" I pleaded, watching her clip a thorn with almost painful deliberation. Mom sighed, straightening up, and finally looked at me, her eyes mirroring Clara's same wounded clarity. "She's dismantling a life, Amelia. It's a surgical, painful process. She's selling the house. The perfect house that she poured her soul into. She said she can't stand to live in a place where betrayal walked the hallways." Tears sprang to my eyes. Selling the house. I didn't know it was that bad. "It's worse than you know," Mom murmured, stepping closer, laying a hand on my cheek. "Clara is grieving not just for the marriage, but for the loss of her belief in stability, in loyalty, and in you. You were her bedrock, Amelia. She could rely on you to be complicated and messy, but never malicious. You forced her to question everything." She paused, looking directly into my eyes. "And you need to understand that this isn't about Leo anymore. It's about her trust in us. You can't rush this, honey. You can only give her the distance she needs and hope that someday, the love outweighs the pain." Driving home that day, the phrase, "dismantling a life," echoed in my mind. Clara wasn't wallowing. She was aggressively rebuilding, tearing down the structure we had helped ruin and starting fresh. I realized then that my current state of passive guilt was useless. I couldn't fix the marriage, but I could and had to fix myself. I started small. I got back into my studio, forcing myself to paint not chaos but structure. I took on commissions, focusing on the rigid lines and challenging perspectives of architectural renderings, a deliberate contrast to my own messy life. I found a stability in routine I had always rejected. The real shift came during a quiet afternoon when I was sorting through old photos. I found an album dedicated solely to the two of us. Awkward childhood portraits, defiant teenage snapshots, joyous wedding photos, hers. I stopped at a picture taken just after her engagement to Leo. Clara was beaming, leaning into him, but her free hand was gripping mine, her eyes finding mine over his shoulder, a silent promise of shared happiness. We were a unit, a three-legged stool. Clara and Leo as the perfect couple, and me, the sister, firmly anchored beside them. The ghost of that shared past settled over me. I finally understood the depth of my selfishness. I hadn't just flirted with her husband. I had attempted to dismantle the foundation of her entire identity, the carefully constructed persona of the woman who always chose well, who was always right. By undermining her choice in Leo, I had undermined her faith in her own judgment. I wrote letters. I didn't mail them. They were for me. One to Leo, simple and accusatory, detailing his cowardice and the ugliness of his double betrayal, the other woman and me. The others were to Clara, thick stacks of paper filled with messy, rambling attempts at apologies that invariably failed because they contained too many excuses. Eventually, I wrote one short letter, stripped of all defensiveness, containing only one essential truth. I sealed it in an envelope but still didn't mail it. I didn't want to break her silence with a word that hadn't earned its passage. Meanwhile, Clara was executing the divorce with ruthless efficiency. Leo resisted briefly, trying to negotiate terms and perhaps a path back. But Clara was financially independent and emotionally detached. She cited irreconcilable differences, refusing to drag the mud of his multiple infidelities through the courts. She wanted a clean break, prioritizing dignity over vengeance. The climax of this period of separation came when she decided to sell the marital home. She didn't use an agent she knew. She found one in a distant neighborhood and handled all communication electronically. One afternoon our mother called me, her voice trembling. "Amelia, I need you to do something for me. I can't tell Clara, but she has a closing appointment for the house tomorrow." She told me she threw away every photo, every item of clothing, everything that reminded her of him. But I know she wouldn't have thrown this away. She just can't face it. Mom explained that hidden in a false bottom drawer in the master bedroom dresser was a small, ornate wooden box containing all the letters Clara and Leo had exchanged during their 2 years of long-distance dating, before the wedding. It represented the purity of their beginning. She needs to keep them, Amelia, but she can't be the one to retrieve them. It will break her. "I can't go. Leo might be there for a final walkthrough. You need to go tonight. It's an act of loyalty, not a breach of her command. Do this for her, please." It was the ultimate test. To re-enter the scene of the crime alone in the dead of night, to salvage a relic of the love I had helped destroy. It was terrifying yet necessary. That night I drove back to the house for the 3rd time. The lawn was overgrown, the curtains drawn, and a "for sale" sign stood sentinel by the curb. It was a ghost house. Using the old emergency code Mom still remembered, I unlocked the side door and slipped inside. The house smelled sterile, empty, and strangely cold, like a museum after hours. The furniture was gone, leaving faint indentations in the hardwood floors. I walked through the cavernous living room, seeing ghosts of laughter and family dinners, before ascending the stairs to the master bedroom. The room was vast and bare. I found the dresser in the corner. A beautiful antique Clara had refinished herself. My hands shook as I reached for the bottom drawer, feeling for the small latch that revealed the false bottom. It clicked open, and there it was, the small, dark walnut box, tied with a faded ribbon. As I lifted the box, a small, laminated photo slipped out from under it, fluttering onto the floor. Picked it up. It was the photo I had been looking at just days before. Clara, Leo, and me, taken on their engagement day, her hand gripping mine over his shoulder. But someone had taken a pair of scissors to the photo. Not to tear it, but to perform a precise, surgical edit. The photo was carefully trimmed just to the left of Clara's body, completely removing Leo. It was Clara, still smiling, but now standing next to an empty space. And more chillingly, the trim line continued. Just to the right of Clara, a neat straight cut had also removed me. Clara hadn't just removed Leo from the picture of her life. She had, with chilling clarity, removed her sister as well. I stood there in the dark, empty room, holding the photo remnant. Just Clara, alone, framed by silence, ready to start over. The truth was harsher than any angry word she could have screamed. She needed neither of us. I had been hoping for her rage, which would eventually burn out. I had found something far worse. Her indifference, her complete resolve to proceed without me. I tucked the wooden box securely into my bag, leaving the edited photo on the dresser where she might find it, a final, wordless confession of her pain. I slipped out of the house, the ghost of my sister's absolute separation chilling me to the bone. My life settled into a grim routine. The quiet of my apartment was only occasionally disrupted by calls from my mother, who reported that Clara was moving forward. She had settled into a new, smaller condo, started a community garden, and most notably, taken a significant promotion that required intense focus. Clara was channeling the entirety of her fractured energy into achieving spectacular success, leaving no space for grief or forgiveness. I was focused on my painting, selling just enough to keep my landlord happy and trying to mimic her self-sufficiency. I hadn't mailed the apology letter, still believing her silence meant I hadn't earned the right to break her peace. The wooden box of letters I retrieved from her old home remained at my mother's house, a forgotten relic of a distant, happier past. The first crack in my isolation didn't come from Clara, but from Leo. One Thursday afternoon, I was at a cafe near the financial district, meeting with a client about a mural commission. I saw him instantly. Leo, looking thinner and slightly gray around the edges, seated in a secluded booth with a younger woman. She was beautiful, polished, and clearly distraught. I recognized her immediately from my mother's discreet investigation. Sarah, a junior associate at Leo's firm, the woman responsible for the mystery parking garage receipt. The real reason for the divorce. I froze, adrenaline surging. I should have walked away, avoided the collision, but the months of bottled-up guilt and the bitter sting of being his pawn propelled me forward. I had to know the truth for Clara, and for my own pathetic role in his lies. I approached their booth and stood over them, my shadow falling across their tense faces. "Well, look who it is," I said, my voice dangerously even. "The happy couple." Leo looked up, and the color drained from his face. It was the same look of trapped panic I had seen in his kitchen, only deeper, dirtier now. "Amelia, what are you doing here? You need to leave," he hissed, glancing nervously around the cafe. "I'm just checking in on the real architect of my sister's divorce," I countered, ignoring his command. I looked at the woman, Sarah, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. "And you must be Sarah, the woman he was cheating on Clara with while he was busy flirting with Clara's naive little sister to cover his tracks." Sarah recoiled as if struck. Leo stood up abruptly, grabbing my arm. "Don't do this, Amelia. She has nothing to do with you." "She has everything to do with me," I retorted, yanking my arm free. "We were both used as collateral damage, Leo. You turned your wife's family into your entertainment, and you dragged this woman into a marriage you had no intention of saving. Tell me, Sarah, is he telling you how Clara found that parking receipt? How he offered me up as the less damaging villain?" Sarah looked from me to Leo, the pieces clicking into place on her face. "Leo, what is she talking about? Who are you?" "She's my sister-in-law, my ex-sister-in-law," Leo ground out, his jaw clenched. "She's unbalanced, Sarah. She has no idea what she's talking about." "Unbalanced?" I laughed, a short, sharp sound that drew the attention of the surrounding patrons. "I know exactly what I'm talking about, Leo. I know you've been lying to Clara for over a year. And I know I was stupid enough to let you think your cheap flirtation with me made you feel less guilty about your actual infidelity. I came here to tell you that you are a vile, manipulative coward, and I hope Clara takes you for every last penny. I looked at Sarah, feeling a strange mix of pity and disgust. He will do to you what he did to my sister. He uses people who make him feel important. And when the pressure mounts, he finds a new distraction. Tonight, you just realized you're the old distraction. I didn't wait for their response. I turned and walked out, leaving Leo stammering and Sarah staring at the wreckage of her own relationship with Clara's ex-husband. It was a messy, undignified confrontation, but it purged the last of the confused resentment I held toward him. He wasn't the romantic fantasy. He was just a liar. The confrontation with Leo had a surprising consequence. It restored a tiny bit of my lost self-respect, giving me the courage to finally act. I drove to my parents' house, retrieved the apology letter I had written, and mailed it. It was short. Clara, I was selfish and reckless. You were right about everything. I'm so sorry. I hope to earn your forgiveness one day. Until then, I respect your space. Love, Amelia. 2 weeks later, the day before Thanksgiving, my phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar number. Hello, I answered cautiously. It's Clara. Her voice, usually warm and musical, was now thin and strained. It was the first direct contact in 6 months. The impact was immediate, physical. My knees almost buckled and I had to lean against the wall. Clara, thank you for calling. Don't thank me. I didn't call to forgive you, she said, her voice businesslike. I called because I have a problem, and you are the only person who can solve it. And yes, it is about Leo, she explained quickly. She was scheduled to attend a major industry gala on Thanksgiving night, an event crucial for securing her new company's biggest client. She had been invited as a +1 by her CEO, but the CEO had been hospitalized that morning. She had to go. The problem? Leo was on the organizing committee and would be highly visible, and she couldn't risk a scene or a moment of awkwardness that might jeopardize the deal. I need a shield, Amelia. A highly visible, highly distracting shield. I need someone who can draw attention and make it crystal clear to everyone, especially Leo, that I am not alone and I am not broken. And you chose me? Asked stunned. The person who caused the problem. Precisely, she said with a dry, chilling chuckle. Because no one expects us to be together. Our public reappearance will be a statement of my strength. And you, Amelia, are very good at commanding attention, however chaotic. It's a transaction. You owe me, and this is how you start paying back. It was ruthless, brilliant, and completely Clara. She was using my notoriety, my familial shame, as a weapon in her professional war. I'll do it, I agreed instantly. What do I need to wear? I've already handled that, she said. I had a dress sent to your apartment this morning. Be ready at 6. Don't be late and don't talk about the past. We are here tonight to project stability and success. Can you do that, Amelia? Be stable for 4 hours. I can be stable, Clara, I promised. I can be anything you need me to be. At 6 o'clock sharp, a sleek black town car arrived outside my building. I was already dressed in the gown Clara had sent, a vibrant emerald green backless silk dress that was entirely too glamorous for my life, but perfectly suited for a public spectacle. It was a clear signal. I am beautiful, I am fine, and I have moved on. When I stepped into the car, Clara was already inside, dressed in an equally stunning, but more tailored sapphire blue gown. She looked spectacular, every inch the powerful executive, but the faint shadows beneath her eyes betrayed the months of pain. The drive was silent, save for Clara's clipped instructions on who to greet and what to avoid discussing. She treated me like a valued but highly volatile asset. We arrived at the ballroom, walking in side by side. The effect was immediate. Whispers and averted glances followed us. The sight of the two estranged sisters, looking like a pair of formidable glittering warriors, caused a ripple in the room. We worked the room efficiently. I performed my role flawlessly, using my natural effervescence to draw in conversation, keeping the focus away from Clara's personal life and toward her professional prospects. She was calm, professional, and utterly magnificent. Then, inevitably, we saw Leo. He was across the room, talking to an older, influential couple. He looked up and our eyes met. The color left his face again, but this time, the panic was replaced by a slow, dawning comprehension of Clara's strategy. When he saw me, the original mistake, now walking confidently at Clara's side, it was the final public confirmation of his failure. Clara, sensing the moment, stopped precisely 10 feet from him. She didn't look at Leo. She simply leaned toward me, her hand resting briefly on my arm, and smiled the most genuine, radiant smile I had seen in months. "Thank you, Amelia," she murmured, her voice just loud enough for me to hear. "I truly needed this." Leo stared, horrified, realizing that we weren't just a distraction. We were a unit, temporarily reunited by his betrayal. He had thought he could compartmentalize his lies, but the two women he had deceived had coalesced into a single, unstoppable force against him. He turned abruptly and began a rapid retreat toward the bar. The goal had been achieved. But as Leo vanished, the adrenaline left me, and I was suddenly face to face with Clara, the silent air between us thick with shared history and lingering pain. "He's gone," I observed quietly. Clara nodded. "Good. Now we can leave." As we waited for the car outside, the cool air settling over the silk of my dress, I took a risk. "Did you get my letter?" She paused, looking out at the city lights. "Yes, I received your letter." "And?" She turned to me, her composure finally breaking just a fraction, revealing the woman I knew. "And it was exactly what I needed. An apology without excuses. Thank you for that. But an apology is just a word, Amelia. Doesn't fix the broken trust. You destroyed the lens through which I viewed the world. You destroyed my ability to believe that I was truly loved, unconditionally, by the people closest to me." "I know," I whispered, aching for her pain. "So no, I don't forgive you. Not yet. Not for a long time. But tonight," she admitted, looking me up and down, a reluctant appreciation in her gaze. "Tonight you were my sister. You held up my shield and you took the blow for me just like you used to do when we were kids. And for that, I am profoundly grateful." The town car pulled up. As we prepared to step inside, Clara stopped, her hand hovering near the door handle. "The divorce is final next week," she said. "I won't be in touch after tonight, Amelia. I need to focus on building a life where I don't have to rely on either of you for anything. But when that life is strong enough, perhaps we can talk about a future where we are sisters again. A different kind of sisterhood. One that's earned, not assumed." She got into the car without looking back, leaving me standing on the curb, the emerald silk swirling around my legs. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of rejection, but the sound of a conditional truce. The path to reconciliation was long, and it had just begun. The night of the gala became a turning point, not because it led to immediate forgiveness, but because it established a new, pragmatic form of communication. Clara was true to her word. After dropping me off, she didn't call. The silence resumed, but now it was a necessary quarantine, not a cold rejection. I knew where I stood, on the long, difficult path of earning back my sister. I threw myself fully into my work, using the discipline Clara embodied as a template. I started saying no to social engagements that felt hollow or self-destructive, and I focused my chaotic energy into my studio. I painted Clara, not the glamorous executive, but the young girl in the family photos, the one with the earnest, worried eyes who always looked after her little sister. I realized my attraction to Leo had been less about him, and more about a toxic desire to share in Clara's stable, grown-up world. 6 more months passed in this focused, quiet manner. The divorce was finalized, and our parents confirmed that Clara was thriving in her new role and her new life. She seemed happy, detached from the ghost of her former, seemingly perfect marriage. Leo had been quietly transferred to an office overseas, a professional banishment engineered by the company's higher-ups who clearly favored Clara's rising star over his compromised integrity. My own life began to align. My art was gaining attention, specifically the architectural abstracts that required rigorous focus. I signed a lease on a studio space downtown, a big step towards permanence. It felt good to build something of my own, something that didn't rely on the borrowed light of my sister's success. The reunion finally came, unceremoniously, on a humid afternoon in August. My parents were hosting a small, subdued barbecue, a carefully orchestrated neutral territory event. Mom had called me with a simple instruction. Clara will be here. Be respectful, be brief, and most importantly, be yourself but a better version. I arrived first, nervous but determined. When Clara walked onto the patio, the sight of her sent a familiar jolt through me. But this time, it was pure sisterly recognition, devoid of competition or guilt. She looked healthier, genuinely relaxed. She wore a simple white sundress and her hair was pulled back, revealing a new clarity in her expression. The awkwardness was a palpable entity, stretching between us as we both greeted Mom. Our first words were stilted, formal. "Hello, Amelia. Clara. You look well." "I am. Your gallery show was impressive." Mom sent me the pictures. It was the highest praise I could hope for. Acknowledgement of my success, validation that she was, despite everything, still watching. We didn't speak again until after dinner, when the low summer sun was setting. We found ourselves leaning against the porch railing, looking out over the quiet backyard where we had spent our childhoods. Clara broke the silence. "The letters you retrieved from the house. Thank you for that. Mom told me what you did." I nodded, my throat tight. It was the least I could do. "I didn't look at them. I promise." "I know," she said softly. "You didn't mail your apology until you had earned the right to break my silence. You also saved my evening at the gala. You were a good sister that night, Amelia. A loyal one." "I'm trying to be better," I replied, looking down at my hands. I realized that my biggest flaw wasn't the flirting. It was my underlying desperation. I used Leo to try and take something that belonged to you because I didn't think I could build something of my own. I was lazy, selfish, and deeply resentful of your success. Clara turned to me, her expression serious. "That's the honest truth I needed to hear, Amelia. And I'll give you an honest truth in return. I was complicit in the fantasy. I built a perfect life with a man who was easier to mold than to challenge. I married Leo partly because he was stable, but mostly because he was safe. He was safe because you and I had already vetted him. When you started flirting with him, part of me was angry, but another part of me felt vindicated. I felt validated that even my messy sister found him attractive. It fed my ego that my possession was desirable. We were both seeking validation through him. Her admission was staggering. It removed the last layer of black and white judgment, revealing the complicated, messy gray of their shared responsibility. "So you're saying?" "I'm saying the failure was three-sided, Amelia. Leo was the primary liar and betrayer. But I built an unsustainable fortress of perfection, and you attacked it because you felt excluded. You were looking for a way in, and I needed to be knocked off my pedestal. You just chose the most destructive tool possible." She paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. "I've spent the last 9 months learning how to stand alone. I sold the house, not because I hated the memories, but because I had to prove to myself that I didn't need the trappings of that perfect life. I needed to know that Clara was enough." "And are you?" asked gently. A genuine smile touched her lips. "I am. And now that I am enough, I can afford to look at you again. But this is the condition of our future, Amelia. The old sisterhood is dead. The one where I was the responsible one who cleaned up your messes, and you were the wild one who kept me entertained. That dynamic created the opening for Leo. We have to be two separate, whole women who choose to be sisters, not two halves trying to complete each other." The clarity was painful, yet liberating. It meant no more emotional crutches, no more excuses, but a real adult relationship built on earned trust. "I accept that," I said, meeting her gaze, feeling lighter than I had in a year. "I am done trying to lean on you. I want to stand beside you." Clara reached into the pocket of her sundress and pulled out a small, worn piece of paper. It was my short, unexcused apology letter. I kept this, she said, her voice soft. I read it every day for a month. And I finally believe it. The work you've done on yourself, the structure, the focus, the success on your own terms, that's the apology I needed. That's the proof you've changed the foundation of your chaos. She looked at me, a glimmer of the old warmth returning to her hazel eyes. I still don't know if I can forgive Leo. But I think I can start to forgive you. It will take time. There will be relapses, awkward moments, and boundaries. But I don't want to be an only child anymore. I didn't try to hug her. I didn't cry. Instead, I offered her a simple, firm nod of understanding. Thank you, Clara. That's all I can ask for. We stood there for a few more minutes, the silence now comfortable, filled with the promise of a difficult but honest future. As the night drew in, my mother called us in for dessert. Clara turned to walk back inside. Just before she stepped through the doorway, she stopped and looked back at me, a mischievous light in her eye. And Amelia. Yes. That emerald green dress you wore at the gala. I want it back. It was stunning on you, but I bought it. It's mine. You can borrow it again, but you have to ask nicely next time. I laughed, a rich, full sound that felt entirely genuine for the first time in a year. It was a mundane demand, a trivial, sisterly skirmish over clothes, a clear, deliberate gesture of normalcy. Deal, I said, matching her smile. And I'll bring the gin next time we watch a bad movie. Clara didn't say anything more. She simply nodded and walked inside, leaving me to follow. The journey of picking up the pieces had begun, not with a tearful reunion or an instantaneous act of forgiveness, but with a promise of mutual accountability and the quiet, conditional return to sisterhood. The flirtation had burned down the old life, but from the ashes a new, stronger family bond, one earned through pain, not genetics, was finally beginning to rise.